Welcome everyone to our session here with Miss Debbie. I am so excited to see this detecting quality work. Look at all these cute clip arts. I love when we have kindergarten teachers present. Debbie, we're so excited to have you here. If everyone can give a round of applause or a thumbs up, it's not easy to be a presenter, and we're glad that you took the time to do this for everyone today. So Debbie is coming to us from Ohio Virtual Academy, and this session is, of course, individual and peer feedback in the online classroom. This is a 30-minute session, so I don't want to waste any of Debbie's time. I will hand the microphone right over to her. I will just be here to help moderate the chat and moderate the room if it's needed. So welcome, everyone, and here is our presenter, Debbie.
Hello, everyone. Hopefully my volume is good. If it's not, let me know, and I will make adjustments. I am appreciative that you guys have chosen to join me today for this. It's been my goal this year that I've worked with on my instructional coaching sessions, and it's really become a passion. Even though I am a kindergarten teacher, and yep, we've got cute clip art, I think those of you at the upper grades will find plenty of things to apply to your classroom as well. And basically, the whole purpose of this is to move beyond just the green check, red X, or the thumbs up, or the smiley face emojis, so that we can get a little bit more information about our students' understanding. So, you know, this is the abstract right here. I've taken a lot of my work from Maurice Gibbons, Nancy Perry, strategies from Read, Write, and Think, and also from Accountable Talk session that I did through Coursera. If you haven't done that one, that's an excellent, excellent course that really we can apply to our classroom. We're going to talk about suggestions and strategies. I wish we had time to turn this into a workshop so that you guys could actually implement today. But I do hope you leave today's session with an increased understanding of the importance of individual and peer feedback, and take away at least one strategy that you can just turn around and maybe implement even tomorrow or next week. So let's go ahead and get started. This is a picture of myself, and I will say hello. For some reason, my picture is not filling up the screen, so I will just let it go at that. This is my 10th year at OHVA, and I had 4 additional years online, so I have been in the online world as online schooling opportunities have grown and as the online classroom has evolved. So that's been fun to see. So I love teaching, I love learning, and I love explaining things. So we'll do a lot of that today. One of the things that I've noticed with students, and particularly young ones, is that they love to learn new skills, and that enthusiasm for learning is infectious, not only for me as a teacher, but for each other. Through this individual and peer feedback, we're developing reasoning skills, problem-solving skills, and also public speaking skills, all of which I am pretty passionate about. And the start of all of this comes from research from Nancy Perry, at least the start of it for me comes from Nancy Perry, about self-regulated learning. And I am going to go back and use that red check and green X. When you think of self-regulated learning, I originally thought of it as more towards their behavior within the classroom. When I thought of self-regulation, I was thinking of, do they behave, do they follow the rules, that kind of thing. If you guys fell into that as well, give me a green check. If you knew that self-regulated learning also applied to them monitoring their personal academic growth, and you already knew that, you can give me a red X. And I will need to switch those tools real quick to that polling yes-no type. So go ahead. Green check if you were with me that you thought self-regulation was just about behavior, red X if you were really on top of it and knew that that self-regulation was all about them taking ownership of their academic growth. We've got a mixed bag here, so that's great. I think, you know, part of my misunderstanding about self-regulation stems from the early childhood world that I live in, and not so much the older students and being able to take more ownership. So finding ways to do the self-regulated learning and have them take ownership in kindergarten was a challenge, but we did it. And the important thing is that we need to do it because studies show that effective self-regulation leads to positive outcomes such as pro-social behavior and adjustment with the schooling process. And so let's continue on with that. Self-regulated learners are aware of their strengths and weaknesses. They're aware of the demands that are placed on them, and they're also aware of the strategies that they can use to problem solve and cope with tasks that are difficult for them. If they're motivated to learn, they're engaging in learning for the satisfaction it brings them, and I think that's something all of us as teachers want to create is lifelong learners. They're willing to try challenging tasks. They're willing to persist when it gets hard. And the big one, they view errors as opportunities to learn. So all of this self-regulation has a widespread ripple effect, not only to the specific lesson that we're presenting, but throughout their educational career. So students have a lot of autonomy in classrooms that they're allowed to have their self-regulated learning where their choices, they have control over the level of challenge, they have opportunities to collaborate, and they have responsibility for evaluating their work. So that's a big thing that we implemented this year is that evaluation of their work. And it drew me back to quotes that I have used throughout my education, that education is the kindling of a flame, not the filling of a vessel. So if we are allowing them and encouraging them to become self-regulated learners, we want to kindle that flame. We are just not pouring information at them, making those corrections and expecting them to internalize it. We are filling that bucket and lighting that flame at the same time, but helping them to do it along the way. So let's go back to our ABC polling tools and tell me how many of you use individual and online feedback in your classroom currently. So we're going to answer two questions here. So just individual feedback. How many of you use that frequently, occasionally, rarely, or never? It looks like we're up mostly in the top two. I'm going to clear that. And how many of you use peer feedback in your online classroom? And as we're polling, I will say that I use the individual feedback and the peer feedback at every level of the classes that I teach. We teach a mixed ability whole group session. We teach small group phonics, and we teach really low-level remediation sessions. And I use this for all three. It looks a little bit different in each classroom, but I do use it in all 3 classrooms, and it works in all 3 classrooms. Here is the very simplest way for you to implement individual feedback in your online classroom. When they do their exit ticket, how do they feel about what they're doing? You know, can they do it? Is it so-so? Do they need some help? These are a couple different ones I use. I have different ones depending on how they fit on my exit ticket. Do I do this every single day? No, I don't. But I do it 2 or 3 times a week depending on what we're working on. And I got feedback last week that a parent said, Isabel loves to do this. She loves to evaluate herself and be able to finally circle, I got it. So even moving from circling this one to circling that one is a motivating factor for students in the classroom. And again, this is something that can be implemented at any grade level. To take it a notch further, we need to create the infrastructure for self-direction, self-motivation, and self-assessment in our classrooms. This is from Maurice Gibbons. If they are here or here, getting them to articulate specifically what they're having difficulty with is a step closer to them understanding. Hopefully that makes sense. If we can articulate it, we begin to understand it. If when we can put words to it, it's not as scary, it's not as frightening, and it's not this big, oh, I don't understand, I'll never get it. All of a sudden, they're able to quantify and specify specifically what they don't understand. And then it becomes less scary, it becomes more specific, and we can target in. So taking just that self-assessment right there, taking it a step further, and trying to articulate what they need to have trouble with. Yes, good question. At my level, I encourage the students to write if they can, but if they can't, it's perfectly okay with me for the learning coach to write what specifically they're having trouble. I am really big on independence, and the more they can do on their own, the better off I like it. But yes, the learning coach is certainly welcome to write that and give you that feedback, because that's helpful for him or her as the learning coach, it's helpful for their student, and it's helpful for you to have that more specific information. That self-evaluation takes many forms. Again, we got the cute clip art. Everybody's asked to do the top part, but down below, they need to analyze what they need to work on the most. All of us can do that, K to 12. Have a student analyze what they need to work on the most, and then work on that. And when you see what they feel like they need to work on, you can compare that to what your impression is. Maybe that wasn't your impression, so maybe you need to reassure them that they're doing fine with that, or maybe you need to take a look at, why you had a different perception than this particular student. Yes, going back to that previous page, I'm looking at the chat box right there, not to get out. Yes, having this on the same page is helpful. It doesn't always fit on my exit ticket. Sometimes they do have to go to a second page, but it is more helpful to have it on the same page. So, but this is, like I said, this is another way for them to think about, what do I know, what don't I know, what do I feel comfortable with, what do I feel like I need to practice with, and continue from there. This is another example right here. They have to evaluate themselves, and then right here, exactly what can you do? Our goal today was to count by 2s to 20. How far can you get? This lets them This lets them really evaluate whether or not they met the goal for today. What can you do? How close are you to the I can statement that we set out? So think about the I can statements and the objectives for your lesson and how you could implement something like this, where they specifically state what they can do relative to today's goal. We do a lot of self-evaluation in preparation for learning. It doesn't have to be at the end. We always do a warm-up in our small group remediation sessions to get the students prepared for what we're working on and also for where we're headed. So that lets them know what they know that's going to be in today's lesson and what specifically they need to focus on. I have seen a huge increase in focus when we do the self-evaluation at the beginning as well as at the end. We stop and do self-evaluation in the middle of a lesson. We kind of reflect. How is it going? There's a different set of icons down there. They type their initials. Let you know right in the middle of a live session where to monitor and where to adjust. If we've got a whole bunch on the red and the yellow, maybe we don't need to go further in that lesson. Maybe we need to go back and review and then continue forward. So this mid-lesson reflection is useful as well. It lets them know that you're listening to them and that you're paying attention to their learning and that you're interested in how they feel about what they're mastering in the middle of that lesson. We're going to move on to peer feedback. If anybody has any quick questions on individual feedback, you can go ahead and type those in, and then I'll come back to those when we're finished. We talked about peer feedback when we started. I did implement it at the beginning. We started with that individual feedback probably in October, and we gradually worked on that, got them used to thinking about their own learning so that they could apply that thought process to the learning of someone else. I actually used this particular slide. What is feedback? Why is it important? And the students, because of the cute clip art, even my kindergartners were able to figure out that feedback was talking and sharing ideas, and why it was important was that we were helping each other. That's what they got out of it. When it's time to do the peer feedback, these detectives come out of my classroom and they know that this is time for us to check each other's work. I pull that guy onto the screen or I pull her onto the screen, they immediately know that we're stopping what we're doing and we're checking work. So it's just a visual clue. It helps them refocus where we are on a particular page or a particular screen, and we shift gears very easily because our quality, we call him our quality control checker. He comes right out. This is an example, and I do have a recording. It is not a good quality recording, so I'm not going to share it right now. If we have time at the end, I'm happy to let you go back and listen to it. But I did take the screenshot because I wanted you to see that this is actually my classroom. We were sorting by vowel sound. You can see that in this row right here, there are some errors, and we began, and you can see the students, once they noticed that there were mistakes, they started giving the red X, indicating that it was time for him to come out and actually check our work. So this is early on in the process, but far enough along that they are used to checking work and, you know, very much aware of each other's work and paying attention so that we can stop and do it right as a class and do it right for each other. We moved from that previous slide to this, where we take a little bit more ownership. I use these magnifying glasses. They're right out of the clip art that's available here in Blackboard. And I can see who isn't participating, who is participating, and what are they finding and how are they participating? You know, do they always pick the same vowel sounds that they recognize an error with, or do they mix it up? So this, having their initials on this allows me to see exactly who's answering what. You know, for older kids, they could just type their, type their initials, or you could have something else that they thought was cool to be their icon. This just goes along with our quality control checker, and the kids love it. They love being the detective and finding the errors, but this was like step 2 in the process. We also do the breakout room peer feedback where it's, you know, one-to-one. The bonus of this is that they are doing 12 instead of just 6. Okay, so they're sorting 5 words and then writing a word to go with the picture. If I asked them to do 12, they would roll their eyes, but to do 6 and then check your partner 6, way more palatable. We use these down here. You can see right here. They check the work. They use the magnifying glass. That means take a closer look. Instead of saying it's wrong or putting a red X, green means it's right. The magnifying glass means take a closer look. I see a question in the chat box. Do I always have the same students? No. They are different every day, but we do this enough that even when they come through, they know that what we're doing, and if it's somebody brand new, then I have the students explain it, and they know how to do it. Moving on to active listening and peer feedback, this comes from Accountable Talk. This is students were giving book reports. They knew that they were supposed to answer one of each of the W questions in their explanation and presentation of their book. Just this simple graphic, the students that they were presenting to answered the who, what, when, where, how, and how questions. By virtue of the fact that no one in the class could answer a why or a how, gives the student visual feedback that that was a weaker part of his presentation. So this is just a simple thing that we do. The student presents. The other students who are listening have to answer those questions. They know in advance that they're going to have to answer, so they're actively engaged because they have a part in that, because they know they're going to have to give this student feedback on what they heard and what they learned about his book report. So that's a method of giving that peer feedback and actively engaging the listeners. Particularly at the kindergarten level, that can be a challenge. We do a lot of agree, disagree, and why discussion through our literature lessons. This is part of Accountable Talk, and it takes a while to get it going. I think some of you that are in older grades will have a lot easier time of getting this agree, disagree, or why to work. It is very difficult in kindergarten, but we are just about there. It has taken just about all year to get that. Here is another thing that we use in kindergarten when students are making a report. Something I learned, something I wonder. So again, they're actively engaged in the process. They're giving feedback. What was strong about that student's presentation? Because that's what the other students learned. What's something that I wonder? And we talk about the something I wonder. Is that something that should have been in the report, or is that something extra that's stretching our learning? We talk about that. And so this was great, and the student was actually able to answer this Emancipation Proclamation question, which was really cute for a 5-year-old. Here's one of my favorite things that we have done this year. We did a 3-person breakout room, and they did a piece of writing, and then the other students were supposed to give compliments and suggestions. You will see that when we give suggestions this way, there's a picture of presence right there. The reason that's there is so that we don't get upset, we don't get offended. We remember that giving each other suggestions and feedback is a gift that we give to each other. And we reinforce that to tamp down the learning coaches that might get upset and also the kiddos. We talk about that all the time. Feedback is a gift. And so here is what my kindergartners did with this. When we did this, and this is what we got. So like I was doing a happy dance in my office the rest of the day because it worked. This is a different way to do it as a whole class. We've done that before. And you guys are going to have an opportunity to do that as well. And then we bring that peer feedback full circle back to the individual feedback and reflection. So an individual has reflected on their own work, peers have reflected on their own work, and now we bring it full circle. What did I learn from the whole experience? Not just from the lesson, but what did I learn from the whole experience today? And then we share that out from time to time. And here's another, just a cute graphic that I really like. We talk about the compliments, which are the ice cream. We talk about, well, that's good even by itself. The suggestions are the cherry on top. They make it even better. So we got the compliments down here. We have the suggestions up here as the cherry on the top. And then we have our full circle back to our independent reflection down at the bottom. So my typical Class Connect sessions run about 30 minutes, 35 maybe. That's about all I can keep a kindergartner engaged. So this is a direct conversation from a new student experience. I ask a student, what this picture means, ask them to explain it to the new student in class. Ian said it means we check to see if we made any mistakes. And Kinley says it's so we can help each other learn together and learn even if we make mistakes. So these are the students talking directly, and then the white is the parents. Some of them don't think to have their child check their work. They're at home. It's just easier to check it. Another parent, talks about checking the work as a time saver. And then another parent has talked about the pride that they take in checking their own work and getting excited about correcting errors because they know that they're growing and learning, and that's the bottom line. So that was a blitz through my classroom and the types of things that we do for that peer and individual feedback. I'm going to let loose of the tool. You may type compliments and suggestions for the presentation up here. I thank you for your attention. I hope that you have benefited from it. Like I said, I'd love to have another 30 minutes where we could do a workshop and have you turn something that you're using into peer or individual feedback. But I'm out of time, so go ahead and type away. And if you need anything or have any questions about implementing it, my phone number, my email is up there. And if we can do it at the kindergarten level, everybody else above us can do this.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for
coming.
coming.
I'll give her a round of applause, a thumbs up, a smile, something that this was a fantastic session. I know every one of the sessions I've been in today, I just think, oh, we need more time. We need just a little bit more time. But can all use a little bit more time because we always have so much to share. But this was fantastic. We'll take a few moments here for everyone to type on the board that wants to and has an opportunity to, and then we will have to get this room ready for the next presentation that's coming. You all have your sway with the Promising Practices agenda and the different room links. So if you're staying in this room, great. If you need to get to another room, please feel free to exit and load that new room for your next session. Thank you again, Debbie, and I hope everyone enjoys the rest of your Promising Practices Day.
Thanks so much. There are links